Today on You and Your Money, we're catching up with Central Bank Governor John Rolle. Governor Rolle will bring us up to speed on announcements made at last month's quarterly press briefing. He'll also address public concerns surrounding the central bank's digital currency, SandDollar, and will give us a snapshot of the economic achievements Bahamas should be proud of as a country prepares to celebrate 50 years of independence. Keep watching. You and Your Money with special guest, Governor John Rolle, starts now.
You and Your Money is brought to you by Central Bank of the Bahamas, Sun Oil, RBC, J.S. Johnson, and FOCAL.
Throughout our lifetime, we must all make decisions. No matter how we choose, the right one just needs to be made. Like having J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers as your insurance partner. We've been serving the Bahamas for over 100 years. Whether you need home, motor, marine, or commercial insurance, make the right decision. Call 397-2100 or visit jsjohnson.com.
JS Johnson Insurance, peace of mind.
Welcome to You and Your Money, everyone. It's been more than a year since we've had Central Bank Governor John Rolle on the show, so we're excited to have him join us today. Governor Rolle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ria.
Last month, the Central Bank held its quarterly press briefing. During the press briefing, you mentioned that we could possibly see further increases in inflation. What indicators are you seeing that signal further increases?
Inflation in the Bahamas is really a reflection of what we import from the United States. So the pass-through in prices doesn't happen with the same identical timing as when it occurs in the United States. So from that point of view, to the extent that the United States inflation started to level off and begin to decline as we move through the month of December, I would expect that in the case of the Bahamas, we may not see that until going into 2023. The data for the Bahamas is not usually as readily available in terms of the same timeline, so one would not see that. Also, bear in mind that to the extent that these are costs that are passed through in the pricing decisions of local businesses and the like, there will also be that lag that reflects when they bring the goods into the Bahamas.
Now, the Central Bank is leading an initiative to establish a Bahamian Financial Stability Council to monitor and respond to emerging risks that may impact the country's financial stability. Share what led to the decision to create such an initiative, as well as some examples of threats that the Council would step in to address.
So having a Financial Stability Council is best practices across the globe. So just to a great extent in the Bahamas, we're really putting in place systems that exist in many other countries, and it is so that we're prepared collectively across regulatory agencies to act if there is a need to act. A good example is appreciating that banks, insurance, and securities type businesses, they tend to be interconnected, and therefore, depending on how you're responding in the midst of pressure, you need to have securities and insurance regulators on the same page as the banks. As well, a Financial Stability Council takes into account actively the interests of the Ministry of Finance, because when we think about stepping in to manage stress within the financial system, we also think about the fact that the way those issues are resolved often involve direct cost on the taxpayers. And therefore, from that point of view, it is good to have the Ministry of Finance as well at the table. Now, what would be an example of an issue where you would want to have everyone on the same page? Credit, for example. If we see pressures originating in our economy because of the rate of lending, one of the responses that the central bank typically does, for example, is look at how easy or difficult it is to obtain credit. And if you consider that the only aspect of credit that is within the direct reach of the central bank is the credit that originates from banks and credit unions, if on a whole you're going to impact credit within the economy, you also need the entities that are regulated by the Securities Commission and those that are regulated by the Insurance Commission to also be to some extent subjected to similar rules as to how they're going about lending if we're focusing on the ease or the lack of ease in obtaining credit. So that's an example in terms of coordination. And I think in the Bahamas, over time, when we talk about the standards that apply to lending, that is an area where a Financial Stability Council, as an example, would have some value. But it is not necessarily to say that we are anticipating crisis. At the time of crisis, if you don't have the mechanisms in place where you can work together, it's too late. So we have to build our playbooks before anything happens.
Well, I definitely want to commend the central bank for taking the initiative in terms of even being proactive in wanting to have such playbook in place and having to establish a council to be able to assist in these types of matters. Now let's talk about the savings bond initiative that's supposed to come on stream this year. How will it meet the needs of smaller investors?
The focus with having a government savings bond is to make it easier for all persons, or definitely more persons within our community, to be able to save. And the features of a savings bond that make that easier is that it requires smaller increments in which you can add to the investment. And so from that point of view, we would be putting government securities within the reach of more persons within the population. In addition, to the extent that persons are investing in government bonds through a savings instrument, they're also getting access to higher interest rates than they would if they only accumulated their savings in the form of deposits. And that is important because typically it's the size of the amount that one is investing in some instruments, whether it's a fixed deposit or the like, that determines the amount of interest that you're attracting. What a savings bond does, it puts the average individual within the reach of higher rates of return on low-risk investments, much more readily than, say, an investment proposition where you have to come up with a few $1,000s up front. Plus, it has a focus on the regimented approach to continuously putting monies aside for savings.
It's definitely looking at having to create a habit of putting the small amount, no matter how big or small, you're putting that amount into something that's going to bring that return at the end of the day. Now, an important project for the central bank this year is the creation of a movable collateral registry. Talk about the registry. What is it, why is it needed, and the progress that you've made so far?
So our hope this year is that we will progress to the point where the legislation that the government can take to Parliament will be finalized and passed, and that we can begin the process of identifying a private entity that can build the technology platform for movable collateral so that it can be implemented. So being able to set that in motion is very important. Now, what a movable collateral asset register does is that it allows for persons and businesses to use a wider range of assets against which they can secure credit. And the registry would be a way of recording those pledges for credit. In the present system, a lot of lending takes place and it is not necessarily recorded. They can be recorded. You can record even private loan agreements and have them stamped and lodged with the Registrar General. But unless you have a register where this is consistently happening, you may not know as a lender whether you're holding as collateral, whether it's a vehicle, bonds, stocks, or intellectual property. You may not know whether those same collateral would have been pledged for some other lender for credit, and therefore you're not as secure as you might think. And therefore, a movable collateral registry allows for there to be a single place where those types of transactions can be recorded and tracked. Typically, the secure form of lending today is you mortgage real estate or property. And so there is a process for that. And if you think about it, having the means to secure credit other than by use of land or other real estate expands the possibilities for the commercial lending sector.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the financial institutions, they're probably very excited that this is coming on stream because it definitely will help them out in their process of having to facilitate the credit agreements.
And also, let me say that it also expands the possible range of actors who can get into the process of providing credit, because even if you imagine that the traditional lending institutions, maintain their focus on mortgages and the like, and that they have the infrastructure to better research what's being pledged, it means that even the ordinary person who might have the capital that they can lend to someone else, they would have better security around doing that in a system where they too can record the collateral that is pledged to them for a loan. So even in one-to-one situation, there could be use for a movable collateral asset register.
Wow, well, Governor Rolle, we have to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to talk about the central bank's digital currency, SandDollar. You're watching You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Digital banking, online, RBC.
RBC Banking online, pay your bills anytime.
RBC Digital Banking is so easy. Granny and Granddad can do it. Sign up for online banking or download the RBC Caribbean app.
With RBC, it's safe and easy. Send your money hassle-free. RBC.
Visit rbc.com/Caribbean/bank-at-home.
Shell Unleaded improves your fuel economy, giving increased miles per gallon, allowing you to do more of what you really want. Special additives used in Shell Unleaded improve your engine's efficiency. So go further with Shell Unleaded. Venture out to beaches, Junkanoo, and festivals and bring home memories that will last a lifetime. Shell, fueling journeys that matter.
Throughout our lifetime, we must all make decisions. No matter how we choose, the right one just needs to be made. Like having J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers as your insurance partner. We've been serving the Bahamas for over 100 years. Whether you need home, motor, marine, or commercial insurance, make the right decision. Call 397-2100 or visit jsjohnson.com.
S. Johnson Insurance, peace of mind.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. If you're just now tuning in, today we're catching up with Central Bank Governor John Rolle. Governor Rolle, given that digital payment methods are readily available in New Providence, many people don't understand why there is such a great push for SandDollar adoption in the capital. Is SandDollar's success in unbanked and underbanked communities contingent upon the widespread adoption of SandDollar in New Providence?
Let me say that this is first and foremost about financial inclusion and putting the ability of all Bahamians putting the capacity of all Bahamians within the reach of making payments digitally. We know, for example, that about 30 to mid 40% of all of the transactions that are still taking place, particularly at the personal and the retail level, are taking place with cash. And while there's curiosity as to where does a central bank digital currency fit in that, I would wager that most, if not everyone, who's watching this program has cash with them, on them. And so the question is, why do you have cash? Some of you will say, well, it's because if the credit card machine doesn't work, you need to pay with cash. But it's also because you transact with lots of businesses that are still only accepting cash. And so what we're focused on is accelerating and enabling those types of entities to also be in the position to transition to not having to rely exclusively on acceptance of cash. And if we're interested in having that done in a financially inclusive way, then you have to make certain that no part of the population gets left out in their ability to transact with those entities. The other thing that I wanted to mention is this. The Bahamas, Yes, it's central bank digital currency, but a lot of what we're doing by using our telephones to make payments is not innovative. We are behind the time. Because of the SandDollar, we are just now having an interoperable system for persons to use their phones to make payments and to make payments in real time. So the SandDollar is enabling financial institutions and providers of payment to make a very important leap forward in terms of their technology platform. And now we can focus on the adoptions, the education, and the public awareness to address the level of use.
Financial inclusion definitely is a topic that is widespread and can have such a great impact. When you think about, especially like you would have talked about the Family Island persons, the person who's in Auckland being able to make a transaction with someone in New Providence and all within a matter of minutes. At a conference organized by the European Commission and the European Central Bank in Brussels last November, you talked about the lessons the central bank has learned since launching SandDollar. One lesson was the importance of building a network of merchants that accept and encourage the use of SandDollar. What do you say to merchants who are choosing to wait until there's a higher rate of consumer adoption?
We all have a vested interest in reducing the footprint of cash. And interestingly, as businesses, we're actually going to have to lead the consumers, if necessary, on a part of this process. And it means just having the interfaces within your establishment so that you can accept digital payments from all sources. Just having that interface within your establishment is important. One of the questions that businesses ask is, oh yeah, SandDollar is central bank digital currency. They say, yes, but how am I going to get my money? You say, oh, no, it's okay, so that's fine. You receive these payments. You don't even have to think about how long you hold them. If you have a mobile wallet, you can transfer them and deposit them instantly into a bank account. So the SandDollar infrastructure is tied into the banking system. And so if someone has a concern about the collection of revenue and how they use that revenue for other purposes, they have the means to connect those SandDollar wallets up today to a bank account and send their funds through the ACH so that they can make use of them and other forms than SandDollar. So even if there's a concern about having funds sit that you don't have any use for, that concern does not exist because we've integrated the system into the automated clearinghouse, and funds can move between SandDollar accounts and the banking system at the core, and we've given the payment providers who have their proprietary applications, we've given them a mandate that by the end of March, they must, on each of their individual platforms, have completed that tie-in because we've already built that infrastructure so that monies can move back and forth. It means that the average individual can go into a bank account and send monies to top up a SandDollar wallet, or they can go from a SandDollar wallet and what we call cash out by transferring the funds into a bank account if you're a business. But the business community, along with the public education and awareness that the central bank is going to put more energy into this year, the business community has to also see themselves in the role and view that they too have an interest in enabling their customers to shift from having less cash on their persons. And this is a way of leading the consumers as opposed to following the consumers.
I definitely think that the educational component and the campaign is going to help with having to cause the small business community to actually buy into the vision of having to enable their consumers or their clients in having to utilize the actual digital currency. Now, Governor Rolle, we have to take another break. When we get back, we'll talk about the country's upcoming 50th anniversary of independence. This is You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
With the help of our authorized financial institutions, or AFIs, using SandDollars is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Step 1. Identify your preferred AFI by browsing their websites or contacting them directly. Step 2. Download the free mobile application from Google Play or the Apple Store and then register for a SandDollar account. Step 3. Load money onto your mobile app and begin sending and receiving SandDollars or purchasing and selling goods and services.
We are pleased to be
your central bank approved
digital wallet providers.
It does not matter
which of us you choose.
You can pay for goods and services
wherever SandDollar is accepted.
We are all in this together. Visit sanddollar.bs for more information.
Since 1967, Freeport Oil Company Limited has been dedicated to fueling growth and prosperity in the Bahamas. We have been a constant pillar within the country, striving to invest and support our community through the best of times and the worst of times. For us, Full Call represents 21 years of strength and consistency, consistent leadership, consistent growth, consistent customer service. Through it all, we are resilient. Full Call, fueling growth for people.
Digital banking, online, RBC. RBC banking, online, pay your bills anytime.
RBC digital banking is so easy. Granny and Granddad can do it. Sign up for online banking or download the RBC Caribbean app.
With RBC, it's safe and easy. Send your money hassle-free. RBC.
Visit rbc.com/Caribbean/bank-at-home.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. Central Bank Governor John Rolle is still with us. Governor Rolle, in a few months, Bahamians here in the Bahamas and around the world will be celebrating the country's 50th year of independence. Aside from being the first country to launch a central bank digital currency beyond a pilot program, what economic achievements should we as a nation be most proud of?
There's probably not a single granular achievement that I can point to, but what I would say is that for a country to have made it from the 60s into the 70s to this point, and to have had the level of economic stability and progress that we've achieved, I think is something that we should all be proud of. The Bahamas has commended on this repeatedly, even in all of the admonitions we received from the IMF and others about, what we should do about particular aspect of our economy and policies. They always commend the Bahamas on the overall stability that we've had around our economy. And one of the points that they point to is that, you guys have kept your currency at 1-to-1 to the United States dollar over this entire period. That isn't something that happened by accident. That reflects a continuous focus on what needed to be done to keep the balance, a continuous dialogue between the government and successive leaderships at the central bank around making certain that once the government has gone through the process of putting its budget in place, that how the government executed on those budgets was such that we preserved the stability, and once the banking sector started to evolve in a certain way, that evolution always was in such a way that it preserved the stability that we have achieved in that system. The Bahamas is still number 3 behind the United States and Canada in terms of the average per capita level of income that we have. We might say, oh, it's very expensive to live in the Bahamas, and for certain reasons that would make sense. But it also shows you that in getting to this point, we had to make some calls and trade-offs. And the net sum of those calls and trade-offs is, yes, it's costly in some respect, but it has translated into a standard of living that I think we should be proud of. And now we can focus on how we tighten up and improve things in many of the ways that everybody understands that we have to.
Definitely proud of as a Bahamian and the strides that we've made as a nation, being able to maintain that 1-to-1 with the United States in terms of our currency. We've just navigated an unprecedented pandemic. As a nation, how are we preparing ourselves to withstand the shock of another unexpected crisis?
What the COVID crisis illustrated is that we know that we want to have an economy that is not so sensitively tied to the fluctuations in tourism. And so, you know, one of the ways that we believe that can be done is making the tourism product more resilient. Some would argue that, you know, we should also have other sectors that grow in relative importance to tourism. So that's getting to how we diversify the economy more. So I think that is very important in terms of how we get, you know, the economy to be stronger and to perform. And then you do have the very difficult decisions that we have to push through on in terms of educating the population and upskilling the population so that you can get economic activities to flourish in sectors and in activities other than the ones that we're presently focused upon. So I would expect that a lot of this will come down to, you know, the kinds of reforms we do to tweak the attractiveness or the competitiveness of various economic sectors.
You said two key terms, which were upskilling as well as diversification. And those two, I do believe they go hand in hand, especially when we think about what it is that we're looking on to or looking forward to in the future. Now, before you go, Governor Rolle, I want you to take us into the future. 10 years from now, what would a thriving Bahamian economy look like?
10 years from now, I think we want to see an outcome where Bahamians can appreciate what resilience means as a country. So when we talk about resilience in an economy like the Bahamas, it means how is the Bahamas going to position itself so that climate change and all of the increasing you know, threat that we're facing from hurricanes and the like, how do we position ourselves so that we're still around and that we don't have the upswings and the downswings so much in our economy. So that means that we have to find the resources to make a lot of the infrastructure stronger. So that's a given. It also means that we have to deliver on reducing the size of the debt that's on the government's balance sheet, because we know that that's a vulnerability. And we also have to deliver on making the government stronger in terms of its finances. So 10 years from now, I expect that, you know, we've resolved all of these issues around, you know, personal versus corporate income taxes. And 10 years from now, I would expect that a more resilient Bahamas is also a Bahamas that is more integrated into the global economy, and so that this quest that we've had in terms of looking at the World Trade Organization and the like, that we've completed that process, because it does carry with it tremendous potential for businesses and for individuals who are looking outside for opportunities, but who want to stay anchored to the Bahamas. So it's a resilient economy, one where your government balance sheet is stronger and where you're more integrated with the rest of the world for the benefit of those who reside inside the country.
A resilient Bahamian economy is definitely one that we are looking forward to in the next 10 years. Governor Rolle, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow You and Your Money on Facebook and tune in next week for a brand new episode. I'm Ria Christina. Thanks for watching.